You know, Bill was always delivering the unexpected. One time, my parents were visiting us when we lived in Springfield, Oregon, and my parents were visiting from Atlanta, and we got a phone call from Bill, who asked if it would be okay if he and Sue came down and spent the night. They were coming down to buy a car, and we said sure. We had limited space, not a problem. They rolled out sleeping bags and slept on the floor at the house, and the next morning they went off to get the car. And when he drove up, it was a Model T Ford in beautiful, pristine condition with carbide headlights, and I was envisioning a new car for some reason. I guess we never got around to discussing the details, and here comes this classic automobile that, and I looked and I said, yeah, that's Bill.
I remember he had a 1927 Roadster that had an electric start. It had wire spoke wheels, but it only held two people. It was a beautiful black rig, but he liked it, but he really wanted something that would haul more people. He thought it was more fun to give people rides than to look good with one other person in the Model T. So he ended up getting this one. He wanted a brass one because he wanted the brass trim and I think the wood wheels and stuff.
The magic of that was not that he had it, but he actually had the skill to maintain it, to keep it going. If something really broke on it bad, Bill could actually go out and make a new one, whatever it was. So he had this old Model T, but he actually drove it. There are a lot of those around, well, not a lot, but there are people with those, but they never drive them. They keep them up on blocks, or they're almost in glass cases. They're more or less in museums. But Bill, if it was a nice day, you'd see him out on the road with it. A movie producer from Hollywood used Bill's car in one of his films that he shot up here. Bill always had it out in the parades. He had it around, and he used it. It was, for him, was real transportation.
I think the first time I saw Bill's Model T, I'd seen it around town, and that was before we'd met, and I didn't know who that strange fellow was who drove that funny car. And then we'd started dating, and he came and picked me up to go to lunch in his Model T. And he says, well, what do you think of it? And I said, well, it certainly gets a lot of attention. And it did. And when he did a lot of volunteer work with his Model T. He used it in parades when someone needed a ride, and a dignitary or something like that needed a ride. And he would haul escort brides and grooms from their wedding to the reception in the Model T. And I asked him one time, what do you charge for that? And he said, oh, I don't charge, I just do it because it's fun. And so he was performing a service, and lots of brides got to ride in a really cool car, and he'd wear a little kind of a chauffeur cap and dress up, and his payment was just the excitement of the day and having a piece of wedding cake.
One evening he came over to our house. I think it was after some kind of a conference or something we had in Longview. Anyway, he took several friends of mine and me for a ride in his Model T. Bonnie went with us too. And we went down the street in front of my house here on Maple to 30th and turned right on 30th, went up to Ocean Beach, and he turned right on Ocean Beach, and just about getting around the corner, one of the local policemen hauled us over. Lights went on, and so Bill pulled over dutifully, and he got out, and we're all the tops down so we can hear what's going on. And the policeman, a young policeman, fairly young, in his 20s, he said, well, you don't have a tail light. And Bill says, well, yes, I do have a tail light.
It's right here. I said, well, it's not on. I said, well, you can't see it because your lights are so bright. And so they're shading the light to see, oh, okay, yeah, there is kind of a light, but can you brighten it or something like that?
I just have to turn the wick up. And the cop looked at him and said, and you see a puzzlement on his face, and Bill went over and bent down and opened the back of the kerosene-fueled tail light, turned the wick up, and the lights got brighter, and the cop's scratching his head. Never seen anything like that before. And he didn't know quite what to do, but he folded up his little ticket book and went back to his car and drove away. But